On day 15 of the trial of Shaun Diddy Combs, the courtroom was shaken by an appearance no one anticipated. Janice Combs, Diddy's 83-year-old mother, took the stand against her own son. Spectators, journalists, and even members of the legal teams fell silent as she walked in. Her decision to testify for the prosecution ran counter to nearly every expectation of family loyalty in a high-profile criminal case. Instead of shielding her son, she delivered testimony that underscored the gravity of the allegations he faced. It was a moment that would alter the entire course of the trial, leaving Diddy visibly rattled and forcing everyone watching to confront how a mother's love can collide with a moral duty to speak the truth. According to multiple court reporters and legal analysts who attended the trial, the moment Janice Combs walked into the witness box caused an almost eerie hush to fall across the room. The media, including outlets like CNN and The Guardian, had already characterized this trial as a major turning point in the landscape of music and celebrity culture. Still, no one, not the judge, not the jury, not the assembled press, was prepared for the emotional and psychological weight Janice Combs would bring. Most surprising of all, she was there to testify for the prosecution. Family members of high-profile defendants rarely take the stand against their own blood, especially in cases this sensational and public. Her choice to do so became a historical flashpoint, prompting conversations on cable news outlets and countless social media discussions about morality, loyalty, and the boundary between supporting a family member and enabling wrongdoing. From a moment she sat down, Janice Combs commanded the room. You could practically hear a pin drop as she raised her right hand to be sworn in. Observers noted that Diddy, usually the portrait of cool confidence, immediately stiffened. The tension in his face, the shift in his posture. These were signs that no highly paid legal team could smooth over. Diddy's attorneys themselves looked visibly anxious, understanding that what was about to unfold could be devastating to their case. Later, a prominent psychologist quoted in the New York Times explained that Janice Combs' decision to testify for the prosecution was a classic example of a moral tipping point, where a person's deeply rooted ethics overpower their long-standing loyalty, compelling them to speak out even against someone they love. It wasn't just a footnote in this particular trial. It became a discussion point in broader debates about parental responsibility and the extent to which families should remain silent or speak up in the face of serious accusations. Once on the stand, Janice Combs opened by talking about her love for her son. She recalled memories of raising him by herself after her husband was murdered, detailing the challenges of single motherhood in a tough environment like Harlem in the 1970s and 1980s. She talked about how proud she was of the young boy who showed early signs of ambition, the child who would one day become an intern at Uptown Records, as widely reported in music magazines and industry blogs, and then go on to revolutionize hip-hop with his own label, Bad Boy Records. She recounted how she watched him become a fixture in pop culture, from the shiny suit era of the late 1990s, which fans can read about in countless music history retrospectives, to his business ventures in fashion, liquor brands, and media. By referencing these accomplishments, Janice underscored that her son was not always the man he eventually became, a sentiment many fans have echoed online. But then, with a steady yet somber voice, she said that somewhere along the way something changed. In a moment that The Guardian described as heart-wrenchingly stark, she painted a picture of how Diddy's meteoric success and immense wealth led him to believe he was, in her own words, above the rules. She cited multiple incidents over the years that raised red flags, though she initially tried to dismiss them or attribute them to the pressures of an extremely competitive industry. A notable element she highlighted was Diddy's increasing need for control. Control over his music, his businesses, his employees, and eventually his personal relationships. As the psychologist in the New York Times analysis explained, this kind of omnipotence can become addictive in circles where success is worshipped and boundaries are easily blurred. Janice Combs spoke of Diddy's explosive anger, describing moments when he would lash out if even gently challenged. She talked about how he began losing respect for boundaries, both in his personal life and in professional settings. This wasn't just hearsay. She described in vivid detail how, During visits to some of his properties, she witnessed staff members cowering in fear, young women who looked disoriented, and entire wings of residences she was told she could not enter. The press, from entertainment blogs to traditional newspapers, had long circulated rumors about secret parties and NDAs required for attendees, but hearing it confirmed from Diddy's own mother brought a new gravity to those once whispered stories. According to a 2021 Rolling Stone investigative piece on high-profile NDAs in the entertainment business, it's not uncommon for celebrities to enforce strict confidentiality. However, Janice Combs' testimony suggested a far darker underbelly than just a desire to protect privacy. She recounted a specific incident in 2008 at Diddy's Miami residence. She arrived unannounced and found the staff frantically cleaning up the remnants of a party. Phones were being collected, a sign, according to multiple industry insiders, of how celebrities prevent leaks, and a young woman was crying as she was escorted off the property. The woman's distress, Janice said, shocked her, and Diddy's reaction was one of pure fury, berating his mother for coming over without warning. Although rumors of raucous gatherings in Miami mansions are common around famous personalities, stories which have circulated in tabloids like the Daily Mail and in gossip columns online, this was the first time someone from the mogul's inner circle provided first-hand confirmation. Janice also mentioned a studio at Diddy's Los Angeles home that he kept secretive. She was explicitly barred from entering, a detail that magazines and blogs seized upon as evidence of more clandestine behavior behind his gates. As Janice continued, she told the court that whenever she tried to confront Diddy about these worrying signs, he brushed her off. According to her account, he would insist she simply didn't understand how the music world worked, asserting that everything was consensual and that the hedonistic behavior was just the lifestyle. In 2017, when the first public accusations of wrongdoing started surfacing, accusations that also appeared in some forms on social media, Janice initially gave Diddy the benefit of the doubt. She loved him, after all, and found it difficult to believe he could truly be guilty of the acts being alleged. He told her these accusers were lying for financial gain, a storyline that was not uncommon in celebrity cases. But what truly shook her was the lawsuit filed by Cassie in late 2023. Cassie, who had been romantically involved with Diddy for an extended period, had always presented herself publicly as an aspiring singer and model. When she finally came forward with claims of abuse, intimidation, and violence, as widely reported by reputable outlets like Billboard, the New York Times, and various music industry blogs, Janice Combs felt compelled to confront her son again. This time, Diddy allegedly responded with a chilling line, "Mom, you don't build what I've built by playing by everyone else's rules. Sometimes people get hurt. That's business." The moral revulsion Janice felt at hearing these words, spoken by the same boy she had once nurtured and protected, crystallized her decision. She told the court that she realized she had reached her limit. This was not the man she believed she raised, and his casual disregard for the harm he might have caused was utterly unacceptable to her. But that wasn't the final straw. In early 2024, she learned of a surveillance video showing Diddy assaulting Cassie, a piece of evidence that made headlines in national media. Watching that footage, Janice realized she had seen flashes of that same rage before. He'd never turned it on her, but she recognized it all the same. And then came the discovery of disturbing notes in his home office. Women's names marked with comments like handled or potential problem, a system that Janice interpreted as a strategic tracking of threats to his empire. Every puzzle piece began to form a picture too grim to ignore. Fearing that her maternal love might cloud her judgment, Janice started keeping her own notes. She wanted to verify what she had seen, what she had heard, and how it all lined up with the increasingly alarming allegations. By stepping forward, she explained she wasn't betraying her son. Rather, she was loving him in the most honest way possible by refusing to cover for him. "The truth matters," she said in a quiet but firm voice. "Accountability matters. I love him enough to tell the truth about him, even when that truth is painful." She also expressed empathy for the women who had suffered, saying they deserve someone to stand up and acknowledge their pain, and that Diddy needed to understand that no one is above basic human decency, even someone with all the power and influence he wielded. According to a 2024 CNN special report covering this trial, the jury and the public were deeply moved by Janice's stance. She described a visit to Diddy in jail shortly before the trial began. She asked him point-blank about the allegations. His response, as she recounted, was a candid admission of creating a world where I made the rules, where what I wanted happened, where people either played along or got pushed aside. When she asked if people were hurt, he said, "Yes, but that's how power works, Ma. That's how it's always worked." During that conversation, she sought clarity about accusations of non-consensual acts, to which he purportedly replied that everything was consensual at the beginning, nobody was forced, but once you're in that world, the lines get blurred sometimes. She told him that consent obtained by coercion or fear isn't real consent. His answer reportedly was, "That's not how it works in my world." According to the New York Times coverage, Janice saw enough truth in his words to realize he wasn't denying what he did. He was essentially validating it from his own twisted perspective. In the courtroom, while his mother testified, Diddy was a statue of repressed emotion. Multiple observers, including a court sketch artist whose illustrations were published in several online news portals, noted that he barely moved. But the real moment of heartbreak came at the conclusion of her testimony, when he seemed to finally break. The man who had exuded confidence and swagger for decades suddenly looked like a lost child, facing the disappointment of the one person whose approval he valued most. Even the defense lawyers conducted a restrained cross-examination, likely recognizing that aggressively challenging this elderly woman would only hurt their case further in the eyes of the jury. Their strategy was simply to emphasize that Janice hadn't personally witnessed any illegal acts. Yet the emotional power of her testimony wasn't in direct witnessing, but in the mosaic of concerns, observations, and confessions from Diddy himself. Then came the bombshell that no one foresaw. Diddy chose to testify right after his mother stepped down. This was a high-risk move. Criminal defense attorneys generally avoid putting their clients on the stand if they think there's any chance it can be avoided, because cross-examination can be devastating. But Diddy took that risk, and when he began to speak, it was a departure from his previous insistence that everything was being blown out of proportion. According to in-depth coverage by the Washington Post, Diddy said he did so because "I listened to my mother yesterday, really listened, and I realized I've been hiding from the truth for so long that I'd almost convinced myself of the lies." He expressed that he was raised better than how he'd been acting, and that somewhere he lost sight of those foundational values. He openly acknowledged his understanding of the racketeering, sex trafficking, and coercion charges levied against him. In what the Los Angeles Times described as a historic moment of personal accountability, Diddy admitted that he had indeed created an environment where people felt unable to say no due to the looming threat of retaliation, job loss, or being blacklisted. He used the word leverage to describe how he controlled those around him, but then he said it was wrong. This was a man previously known for his brash public persona, whether dancing in flashy music videos or boasting about his business conquests, now stripped bare in front of the world, revealing how power had seduced him into believing normal ethical rules didn't apply. He confessed to the system of NDAs, payoffs, and intimidation that effectively silenced victims. By this point, the entire nation was watching. Networks like MSNBC ran special reports, calling the situation unprecedented, while social media lit up with reactions from fans, critics, and industry professionals. Some compared it to the Me Too-era revelations that toppled other industry titans like Harvey Weinstein, especially after the New York Times and the New Yorker published extensive investigations. Diddy's admission contained a crucial acknowledgement. Given the power dynamic he had established, true consent was impossible in many of those situations. He also confirmed almost all of the victims' testimonies, referencing his own history of substance use as a factor that clouded his judgment, but not as an excuse. Crucially, when the prosecution asked him to verify his mother's recollection of their private conversations, he said, "Yes, my mother has never lied to me or about me. She told the truth yesterday." The hush that enveloped the courtroom was profound. It was as if, by validating his mother's testimony, Diddy was removing the last shred of doubt about the authenticity of her words. He even emphasized how her speaking out had broken something open in him, stripping away his final justifications and denials. Legal analysts on Court TV and other platforms noted that rarely does a defendant so blatantly corroborate the prosecution's narrative, especially under oath. By the time Diddy finished his direct testimony and entered cross-examination, it was evident that he was no longer trying to fight the charges so much as he was trying to cleanse his conscience. Everything he said aligned neatly with the prosecution's case, from the pattern of behavior to the specific forms of abuse. Once cross-examination concluded, Diddy's attorneys met with him in a closed-door session with the judge. Nobody knew exactly what was transpiring, but speculation ran wild. When they returned, Diddy announced that he was changing his plea to guilty. He told the court, and by extension, the world, that he could no longer, in good conscience, deny what he had done after hearing his mother and reflecting on his choices. As described in detail by major newspapers like the Wall Street Journal, the room erupted in muffled gasps and murmurs as the implications sank in. With Diddy's guilty plea, the trial, which had been the focus of intense media scrutiny for weeks, came to an abrupt end. The judge accepted his plea, and Diddy was immediately taken into custody. Observers reported that Janice Combs stood quietly, tears in her eyes, as she watched her son led away in handcuffs. Reporters swarmed her, but she paused only to make a brief statement. "This is a difficult day, but also a necessary one. I love my son, but love without truth isn't really love at all." That line resonated with the public in a way few courtroom statements do, sparking endless commentary on talk shows and in opinion pieces. The scenario also ignited deeper reflections about celebrity culture, power dynamics, and accountability, reminiscent of the public dialogues sparked by the Me Too movement when it first took shape around 2017. In the aftermath of the trial's sudden conclusion, the music industry entered a period of intense introspection. Several record labels, which had previously overlooked allegations of misconduct in their ranks, announced internal reviews of their policies and promised to handle any further accusations with greater transparency. Big-name artists who had once been close associates of Diddy either distanced themselves publicly or expressed heartbreak and disappointment. Some criticized him harshly, while others tried to strike a balance, acknowledging the man who had once helped launch their careers while condemning the actions he had admitted to. Meanwhile, more potential victims began to come forward, emboldened by the guilty plea and the knowledge that even a music mogul as towering as Diddy could face consequences. Publications like Variety and Billboard began to run more in-depth stories on the environment of the late 1990s and early 2000s hip-hop and R&B scene, exploring how the pursuit of money and fame sometimes overshadowed moral and legal boundaries. Social media, too, was flooded with discussions about whether society places celebrities on too high a pedestal, allowing them to act with impunity until something truly catastrophic happens. At Diddy's sentencing hearing, which took place a few weeks later, he delivered a formal apology to all those he had harmed. He specifically included his mother, saying, "I'm sorry for betraying everything you taught me. I'm sorry for breaking your heart. And I'm sorry for the pain I caused to the women who trusted me and to the people who believed in me." The judge handed down a sentence reflective of the gravity of the crimes, and the courtroom once again witnessed the emotional weight of a mother and son separated by the consequences of the son's choices.